Good evening, Mr. Bond fans. Another week, another Bond casting rumour for us all to sink our teeth into or roll our eyes at, depending on your perspective of these things. This one came from The Hollywood Reporter, which ran an article saying that an actor by the name of Scott Rose Marsh is apparently has screen tested for the role of James Bond. According to a well-placed source close to the production, Scott Rose Marsh, a 37-year-old red-headed actor whose biggest credits are Craze, Code of Silence, and Wolves of War, was brought in sometime in late June to read sides from 1995's GoldenEye, presumably for just-hired director Denis Villeneuve. He might have also tackled pages from the script Peaky Blinders creator Stephen Knight is said to be whipping up for Bond 26. Whatever the material, rambling source claims Rose Marsh was given just one piece of direction before test cameras rolled. Don't impersonate a previous Bond. It's not a terribly long article, but it does go on to say, there's a comment on the actor's red hair that says, "There has never been a ginger Bond, and that could be a deal breaker." Which is like, how could that be a deal breaker? Did no one look at a picture of the guy before he apparently auditioned? But yes, the clickbait combo of an actor you've never heard of, and then red hair on top of that, it kind of meant that this story got picked up and shared around a lot online. I saw various articles discussing this. I feel like a lot of the articles that I've seen have just been really trying to generate some content out of, can a red-haired man be James Bond, and remember what happened when Daniel Craig was announced and how people were up in arms about his blonde hair. Personally, I find that discussion to be quite a dull one, and I am yet to come across the person who ranks James Bond actors according to their hair colour. Like, I don't think that that should be really a huge factor when it comes to casting the right man in the part, but just in case you do want to know my Bond actor ranking by way of their hair colour, here it is. And then there's just inconsistencies in the Hollywood Reporter article to begin with. Like, if you haven't been able to gather from my tone thus far, I think that this is a load of nonsense. But just stuff like, yeah, reading sides from GoldenEye makes sense. We saw those leaked auditions from a few years ago when they were auditioning people for Casino Royale, and they were doing the GoldenEye scene, so that makes sense. But the bit in the article that says he might also have tackled pages from the script that Stephen Knight is said to be whipping up. I mean, well, that's clearly nonsense. I mean, Stephen Knight was only announced very recently, and it sounds like from like little interview, snippet that he gave on BBC on the radio here that I'd be amazed if there was any dialogue written for the film yet, much less have been ready for when this actor apparently auditioned back at the end of June. I don't know how these rumors actually gain this kind of traction, if it's just like a slow news day and agents and publicists of these people get in touch with journalists to sort of give them these vague, because it said oh, the actor and his publicist have not responded to comment. It's like, of course they're not, because the comment would be, no, actually this is complete nonsense, but obviously it's much better to just keep the rumor going. This actor that, I think few people had heard of before being talked about, it's like, oh, the next James Bond, that's a great, profile boost. Of course it is. Maybe I'm just far too cynical and jaded at this point. But yeah, I think that stuff like this is ultimately manufactured by agents, publicists, to generate buzz around their clients. So as I say, I find the whole hair colour conversation to be kind of a dull one. I don't know this actor's work. He has very few credits on IMDb, so I don't think many people will know this guy's work. There's some TV credits, it's some short films, but not really a whole lot over a period of 3 years from 2020 to 2023. So as much as I do think that this report is a complete and utter fabrication to generate some clickbait and potentially do this actor's profile some favors on the internet, I do think that it brings up an interesting discussion. That being, how unknown can a James Bond actor be in this day and age? When you look back at the actors who have played the part previously, there's only really George Lazenby, I think, that could be described as being a complete unknown at the time of his casting. The man really only had a chocolate commercial and a brash enough personality working for him in order to secure the role, but it does mean that we have some precedent, at least, for an actor with very little previous acting experience to be cast in the role. Obviously, though, Lazenby only made the single Bond film before he departed, so we don't exactly have a template to look look at concerning the potential longevity of an unknown actor in the part. Had Lazenby kept the role, would audiences have taken to him more? Would he have become a superstar along the lines of Sean Connery? We'll never know the answer to that question, of course, but then I think on the flip side of that, you have an actor like Roger Moore, who was obviously very well known from TV work at the time that he was cast as James Bond. But funnily enough, I was watching some interviews on YouTube recently. I came across this one of Dick Cavett interviewing Roger Moore, and it's a really lovely interview. I'll leave a link to it below. It's just Roger being his usual charming self. But there's a comment made about Roger Moore being one of the most highly paid actors of the day.
You're supposed to be one of the wealthiest actors in the business. Did I detect a cringe when I mentioned that?
Well, it's all right.
I really said you're supposed to be.
It's all right. Tax inspectors don't watch this in America.
No,
not our tax inspectors.
I think not.
That's a terrible thing to say to anybody who's the wealthiest. I'm not.
Well, I didn't think you were. That's why I asked if I thought you were. I wouldn't embarrass you with it. I just said you're supposed to be one of the wealthiest.
You saw me ride in on my bicycle.
And I think that that's really interesting because that interview was at a time before he was James Bond. So before he was James Bond, he was apparently very wealthy and, being invited onto talk shows like this, like prime time slots to talk about his career and what have you. So he was a very established figure. I would imagine that, what's the comparable? Like today, would it be someone like Aaron Taylor-Johnson or Henry Cavill being cast in the part? Someone who is already quite well established? And did they feel the need to do that? Did they feel the need to overcompensate in terms of the actor's profile? Because of what happened with George Lazenby, where he went off and decided that he wasn't going to make any more Bond films, and they just wanted to avoid that by getting someone who was perhaps a bit more sort of professionally reliable in that way, maybe? I think where Bond casting has found its most success is in finding actors like Sean Connery and Daniel Craig, who had been in many films prior to their castings as James Bond. They hadn't necessarily received their big breakout roles yet, but they had been in a number of films and even led films. I can't speak for Sean Connery, I was not around in the 60s at the time of him becoming James Bond, but certainly I was around prior to Daniel Craig being announced as the Bond actor, and I'd certainly seen him in the likes of Tomb Raider and Steven Spielberg's Munich, for example, and I don't know if he'd ever really sort of stuck out to me as a potential Bond candidate from those films, but when he was announced as Bond and I was looking up his previous work, I was like, oh wow, I've actually seen this guy in stuff, and there is a body of work there for you to go to kind of search out as a fan, which is quite exciting, really. So it's kind of that level of a profile that I think I personally would like the next Bond actor to have, where it's someone who's maybe not necessarily in the conversation at the moment. I would like there to be some element of surprise, at least, involving the casting, but someone who has a body of work that you can look back on. Like, yes, Daniel Craig was cast in Casino Royale, and you had Layer Cake to look back on as him leading a big film, whereas obviously with the likes of George Lazenby, he'd never led a film before. There was nothing to look back on to even glean how his James Bond might have been. And just to complete the thought on the actors, Pierce Brosnan and Timothy Dalton, again, actors that had been in many films prior to being cast as Bond, leading men, in fact. Brosnan obviously had Remington Steele, the TV series that he was known from. Timothy Dalton had a lot of Shakespeare stage work going for him. Both of a similar level of public profile, I would say. And I guess I would say that they were both a little bit more high profile at the time that they were cast as Bond than either Sean Connery or Daniel Craig were. This is just my own take on it, though. Do let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Maybe I'm overselling how much of a known figure Timothy Dalton would have been at the time, but I do think it is interesting because, like I say, this actor being talked about in these articles, it's interesting because I don't think that Amazon are likely to go for a complete unknown actor in the part. I think that they will ideally want someone who has at least proven that they can lead a feature-length film and that they have some history in big budget, big studio entertainment. Like, don't get me wrong, I think that Amazon would probably, their ideal situation would be to cast the most high-profile, tried and tested actor that they could possibly find for the part. But I have a feeling that when it actually comes down to it, the people actually making the films are gonna want to find someone who will sign up to a contract for X number of years. They have room to grow in the role. I think it's quite known that typically a Bond actor's first film, they get paid X amount, and then it's like, you know, increases in increments over the course of their tenure. And if you already cast like a megastar in the role in the first film, they're already gonna require a substantial salary, and then by the end of it, good lord, where do you end up? I would have thought they're gonna go for an actor who has yet to have kind of a big signature. You know, we've talked about this before. It's like why I never really thought that Henry Cavill was gonna be Bond, because after Superman and everything, I don't think they're gonna want someone who is already known for another big cinematic franchise. So yes, I think someone on the level of a Sean Connery or a Daniel Craig when they were initially cast as Bond would be the sweet spot. Someone who has a body of work behind them. You will have seen him in stuff, has been in big studio movies, but is yet to have that big, you know, the role that will go at the top of their obituary when they die. God, that got a bit morbid, Calvin. So I do think that that rules out any possible notion of them going for someone who has like zero feature film experience. I think that whole thing that happened with George Lazenby in the 60s was probably very much a thing of its time, and I just can't imagine that happening today. Maybe I should hire a publicist or an agent or something and see how easy it is to get my name in one of these articles. Z-list YouTuber has become frontrunner for the James Bond role. I wonder how quickly we could manufacture something like that. Anyway, do let me know your thoughts on this subject below. Are you someone who actually thinks that you would like there to be someone who has literally never been in a film before cast as James Bond? Is there anyone out there that would find that exciting, or does it mostly strike fear into the hearts of most Bond fans? I'm really curious to know. Do let me know in the comment section below. Also below, of course, are links to my various social media pages and the subscribe button and the Mrs. Bell notification button. So click those to stay up to date on future video uploads. And with all that being said, until next time, Bond fans, so long for now.